Hello everybody, welcome to Totally Tabled. My name is Shaggy, and today I'm just running down some of the games that I played in May 2022. This is going to be a real casual discussion and just some of my first impressions of the games that I managed to play last month. I'll try to have everything time-stamped so you can just skip ahead to whatever game interests you the most. And as of May, my gaming is really kind of threefold. One is my solo gaming that I do mostly for this channel, but also just for fun. Second are the games that I play with my family, with my wife and my two sons. Those are mostly, kids games, lighter family weight games. And third, I have a weekly online gaming group. We play mostly on Board Game Arena, and we've been doing that now for several years. Unfortunately, the gaming groups I had pre-pandemic have not quite gotten back together for in-person gaming, mostly just because of life-related things, just trouble with schedules and whatnot. So the variety of my gaming is a little bit limited, but still managed to get quite a few things played. So let's just dive right in, and I'd like to start with just a rundown of some of the stuff that I did last month on the channel. It started with a playthrough of Kanban EV. And really, I started learning and playing the solo mode prior to May, late April. And during that time, I actually had a little bit of an illness, and I was just sitting at my desk. I just had Kanban set up, and I was just playing it over and over again, just to pass the time, and having a fantastic time doing it. My process when I make a video is I always try to play the game usually at least twice before filming. But with Kanban, I think it must have been 4 or 5, I can't even remember, which was really helpful because it's definitely a more involved, tricky system, and I think it really helped with the filming. I'm very proud of that video, so please go check that one out if you're at all interested in a heavier solo game. So that was Kanban EV, that got the month started. That was then followed by Arc Nova. I was really impressed with this solo game. Really loved it. It's one that I'm definitely going to be coming back to often because it plays so quick and easy. It really is my kind of solo mode. And I really just love what's happening in that game with the card play and the tile laying that you're doing on your map. It's all just really fun, a great theme. I did a review of this one, in fact. I did a full playthrough and a review, so go check that one out if you want to see more details about it. But, super hot game, and I totally understand why. Then next, I did something a little different. I did a top 10 light solo games, right? Games for new gamers. And I decided I'd put up playthroughs of just all the games that I hadn't already done playthroughs for. So I did Long Shot, the dice game, Birdie Fight, Herbaceous, Tiny Towns, and Cafe. So this was 5 playthroughs in 2 weeks or so. All lighter games, and it was just a blast. It was so much fun. It's a great palate cleanser after playing a bunch of heavy games in a row for the channel. It's something I'm going to try to do on the channel more, is to intersperse some of these lighter, simpler games with full playthroughs and rules reviews and stuff. So yeah, really had a good time with that. And so there we go. That was basically the month of May for the Totally Tabled channel. But I did get a little bit of solo gaming outside of the channel. These are games that may show up on the channel at some point, or maybe not, I don't know. But these are ones that I did get at least a couple of plays in. And the first one I want to talk about is Switch and Signal. Switch and Signal is a cooperative train game, which I can't think of another cooperative train game off the top of my head. You are essentially using cards in order to try to direct these trains along paths by moving switches around and opening closing signals so that the trains will pick up goods and then take them where they need to go in a certain amount of time without sort of running into each other or, going off track or getting sort of stuck in a place and having to stop. It's an extremely puzzly game, right? But what I love about it is it's super simple and plays lightning fast. It's also, for a cooperative game, a very unique feeling cooperative game. This isn't just like another pandemic style cooperative game. It's really offering something different. And if you like puzzly games, this is great. This is one I'm definitely gonna try to get onto the channel because I'm not hearing enough about it. And I think this would really appeal to a lot of players who it looks like a bigger game, but in reality, it's sort of just this simple, quick playing puzzle. And I'm pretty impressed with it. I've really had a good time with it so far. I've played it a couple of times. It's definitely challenging, and there's several ways of sort of increasing or decreasing the challenge and adding a little bit of variety. There's also 2 different maps with slightly different rules. This is one, if it were to get popular, I could see it being sort of like a Power Grid or Ticket to Ride or Concordia or, Age of Steam style thing where you could just release different maps with slightly different rules to get a new unique puzzle. And I think that would be really neat. But even as it is, really cool design. That is Switch and Signal. Another game that I've gotten a couple solo plays of is Warp's Edge, which is a solo-only bag building game. And I love bag building as a mechanism. That's what drew me to this one. In Warp's Edge, you're pulling tokens from a bag that might be energy, or it might be defense, or it might be attack, or all sorts of tokens that give you different special abilities and stuff like that. And you are using these to take down these spaceships. And when you take one of the spaceships down, it gives you a little benefit, which can be different unique tokens that you put into your bag. You can also use energy to acquire new tokens and better tokens to put into your bag. And you're ultimately trying to destroy all of these spaceships so that you can attack a boss spaceship, like a mothership, which has its own unique special abilities. Also, between rounds, you're getting these skill cards, which you can also spend energy to activate that will give you new unique special abilities. It's really simple, and it has a ton of replayability because you have these different scenarios which have different types of chips that will be unlocked, so that have unique different powers. So depending on the scenario you're playing, you have a bunch of different types of actions at your disposal. Really cool, simple system. Again, this is one that I'm definitely going to put on the channel as soon as I can. Someone said that they prefer this one to Coffee Roaster, and which also has a bag building aspect, and the two feel very different. It's too early right now. I need to play this more to figure out which one I prefer, but this is definitely one that I think could end up on my top 20, maybe top 10 solo games of all time. I'm enjoying it that much. So that's Warp's Edge. And lastly here from my solo games talk, I just want to briefly talk about the one game that I played, a learning game. So I can't say too much definitively about this, but I did get a quick learning game in for Boonlake, which is the newest Alexander Pfister game, who's a designer that I really, really enjoy, especially Great Western Trail. So like I said, I can't really give that many first impressions here because I really need to play it way more than just this one little learning game, but it was really interesting. I can't wait to get a second or a third play in so I can maybe absorb the rules a little bit more. The AI system is very clever, a little tricky at first, but ultimately I think it's done in a fairly streamlined way. Not quite as streamlined as something like Carnegie, but also not that complicated. And I think with a couple more plays, I'll really have it under my belt. But what really appealed to me in Boonlake was sort of the action selection system and the card play, where you're picking from these actions, and depending on how high it is, that's how much you're going to move down this track to get benefits. But also that action tile that you pick is allowing you to play certain types of cards from your hand. And the whole thing seems to really come together in a very clean and interesting kind of way. There were a few things that, in a first play were kind of hanging me up, things that were a little complicated, couldn't quite get my mind around. That's typical for a first play. but it was definitely enjoyable enough where I want to dive right back in and try it out some more, and again, hopefully get it on the channel. That is Boonlake. Now, I have 3 family games that I'd like to talk about just a little bit that I played during the month of May. And the first one I want to talk about is Stardew Valley, the board game. This is a cooperative game that's based on the video game Stardew Valley. And I played this one with my 11-year-old son. Now, I'm only vaguely familiar with the video game. I haven't really played it that much. And while the board game certainly captures the theme and the setting, of the video game, it's not trying to replicate the gameplay necessarily. The video game's kind of an open-ended, farming sim type thing. This is definitely not like that. This is a cooperative game that is mostly built around trying to achieve a bunch of objectives before time runs out. And it's pretty interesting because you actually have to do some work to even uncover the objectives to find out what you need to be doing. So that's sort of the first part of the game, is just trying to flip over those objectives so you can find out, okay, this is what we need to do to win the game. And it's got sort of an interesting system where, you play a character that has a specialization, and then you pretty much stick to doing that action a lot during the game. So for instance, my son was the character that's good at mining, and so he spent the whole game doing a ton of mining, whereas my character was the one that was good with fishing, and so I did a ton of fishing along with some of the other things that you need to do. And a lot of these little different activities just have a different little kind of mini game thing that you're playing, mostly that involves rolling dice to try to collect resources that you then turn in to do various different things. It was surprisingly long. I didn't think it was going to be as long as it was, which was okay. It wasn't horribly long or anything. It was fine, just longer than I thought. And it was hard. It was kind of brutal. We ended up having an amazing game of it because it looked like we were going to lose right up till the end. And then just through a crazy series of luck, essentially, just insane luck, we managed to draw a card that let us do a thing, that let us pull out a victory at the very end. Incredibly unlikely. It was like a Hail Mary, and we pulled it off. And so that was really thrilling and fun. We had a great time. It's a interesting game. I would need to play it more. I've only played it once. It's one that my son would happily play again, and I think now that we would know a lot more about what we were supposed to be doing, so I think we would maybe have a better time of it. But yeah, it's an interesting one. It's one that I'm not exactly sure how I feel about. There is a lot of luck in it, and there's a little bit of repetition, but at the same time, we were having a really good time. So I don't know. It's one I'm interested to try again and try to solidify my thoughts on, but not sure if that one's gonna make it onto the channel. Maybe sometime. But anyway, that is Stardew Valley. The next family game I want to talk about is Summer Camp. Summer Camp's like a light deck building game by Phil Walker Harding. And this game really does feel like sort of like, my first deck building game, my first Dominion or something. It's got this great theme of, being at a summer camp, trying to earn merit badges and things like that. And it's got all these different sort of decks of cards. I think there's something like 7 or different decks of cards. And you choose a random assortment of 3 of them for your game. And you're going to shuffle up those decks, and then you have your base cards. And then you're going to play a little deck building game with those 3 decks. And so each game, you can have sort of a different set of 3 decks and have a slightly different game. And ultimately, you're just playing a, pretty standard deck building game, but you have these different powers, and you're moving along these 3 different tracks. Racing in a sense down these tracks, trying to get to the end of them first, which adds a neat little element. I liked the racing element in it because it really helps to build up some of that tension. If you're building up your deck a certain way, you may be falling behind in these tracks a little bit, and then as your deck starts to work, maybe you can start moving a little faster up. And so there's a little bit of a tortoise and hare sort of situation going on in these different tracks, which makes it pretty enjoyable. But other than that, it's very light. And, you know, a lot of deck builders are very light, but this is a great family weight one, a great one to introduce really anyone to deck building as a mechanism. Again, I played with my 11-year-old and he really enjoyed it, and it's definitely one that's going to come out more often. I haven't tried it with my 8-year-old yet. I'm not sure what he would think of it, but yeah, this is definitely one worth checking out, I think, especially if you enjoy deck building. So that is Summer Camp. And the last family game I want to talk about that I played in the month of May is the Catacombs of Karak. Or Karak? This one I got to play with both of my sons, and it's one we've played quite a bit, actually. It's one that just keeps coming out because it's an incredibly simple dungeon crawl game. This is a dungeon crawl game for kids. You are exploring a dungeon, building out the map as you go. When you get to certain rooms, you draw from a bag of different monsters, and then you roll dice to try to defeat the monster. Each player has a character that has different special abilities, so you may be able to roll twice or re-roll one of the dice or skip past the monster, do all these different sort of special abilities. But if you defeat the monster, then you flip it over and it has a item on the back that you get to collect. It might give you a +1 to your dice rolls, or a +2 or a +3, or it might give you some healing, or it might give you a key that you can then, if you discover a treasure chest, you can open it, and that's worth a point. And that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to collect keys and treasures to get points. And then there's also somewhere in that bag, one tile mixed in with all those other tiles is the dragon. And when the dragon comes out, it's the most difficult to defeat, and you have to have built up quite a bit before you go attack it. But whoever defeats the dragon gets essentially 1.5 treasures, 1.5 points, and that signals the end of the game. And then whoever has the most points wins. And so you can have some very funny situations come up where, you know, you draw that dragon super early, and it's just there, sitting there, and you know, no one can attack it yet. You have to try to build up, get some of those weapon items that give you, you know, +2, +3. You can get up to like +6 to your dice roll, which you need in order to defeat the dragon, because you have to roll like a 16 to defeat it. But we've also had games where it's like literally the last tile drawn. So, and then there's just this kind of mad rush to get to it and beat the one who defeats it. Or maybe you ignore the dragon altogether and you just worry about trying to get those keys and just open as many treasures as you can. It's an incredibly simple game. You know, it's definitely too simple for a bunch of adults to sit around and play. But, you know, with my 8-year-old, it's perfect. My 11-year-old has fun with it as well. And gosh, it's the really great foundation for a game. And you could build on top of this, and with some expansions and some extra mechanisms and things, this could really be like a really cool kind of medium weight family game. You know, just with a few expansions. And there is an expansion out that I don't have for it that I want to get. And I'm not exactly sure what it adds. But yeah, this has been a fun one. And like I said, this one has come out quite a lot. This is one that my 8-year-old will request. Probably going to outgrow it here in a little bit. But for now, we're having fun with the Catacombs of Karak, or Karak. Lastly, I'd just like to talk about some of the board game arena games that I've played with my weekly gaming group. Oftentimes in this group, we'll have 5 or 6 players. So we're always looking for great games that will play at that higher player count. And online, you know, we're a little bit limited in that. But one that we have settled on and have played quite a lot and having a really good time with is Space Base. Now, Space Base plays up to 5, and it's probably not the preferred player count, right? So let me just be clear about that. I think 3 or 4 maybe would be best. It does play at 5, and I think it plays pretty well at 5. In Space Base, it's actually very simple. You are, on your turn, just rolling 2 dice. you're getting a number, and then you get to activate either the number on each die, or instead you could activate the sum of the two numbers on the dice. So you either get one activation of the sum, or you get two activations of each individual number. And you have a tableau of cards, which are these like spaceships, that are numbered 1 to 12. And when you activate a certain number, you get to activate the spaceships that are on that number. And they're giving you, currency in order to purchase new spaceships, or they might even be giving you income that you'll get every round, or victory points. And it's a race to 40 victory points. And so you're building up this tableau. If you've played Machikoro or something like that, it's got a similar system of rolling dice, collecting income, and then getting new cards to add to your tableau so you'll get more income later. The interesting thing about Space Base is when you get a new card, say I get a card that goes into the number 5 slot, the spaceship that I had there goes away, I put the new one, and then that old spaceship gets turned around, flipped over, and it has a different special ability, which is only activated on other people's turns. So as you build up your tableau, you are getting better and better abilities for when you roll, but you're also getting better and better abilities that you can activate on other people's rolls. And when you have 5 players playing, those abilities, the money, the income, and the points that you're getting on other people's rolls becomes even more important. And there's a lot of cool special abilities that you can get on some of these spaceships that will let you manipulate the dice and do all crazy sorts of things. There's even a card that is a just you win card, where if you can manage to activate it enough times, you'll just win the game outright. I've never seen it work, but it's always fun when it's there. Yeah, it's just a very neat game, and it's fun. There's a lot of different sort of strategies that you can go for, depending on what cards come out. My favorite is just to put a ton of cards on a single number, like just on like an 11. And then the whole game, you're just hoping that someone rolls an 11. The implementation on Board Game Arena is really good. Plays up to 5 well, so yeah, I can't recommend Space Base enough. Another game that we like to play at 5 is Stone Age. Now, in order to play at 5, you need to use the expansion, which adds the 5th player and an entirely another sort of hut that you can go to where you get jewelry, which is a whole thing that gets added to the game in order to make it playable at 5. But yeah, this is just a classic sort of family weight game where you are sending your workers out, a worker placement game. You start with 5, you can get up to 10 workers, but you have to feed them, so that's a consideration throughout the game. But you're sending them out to these different locations, mostly getting goods, wood, stone, all the way up to gold. And the way you get those resources is pretty cool, where depending on the number of workers that you place in a spot. So maybe I'll go to the forest where I can get wood, and I'll put 3 workers. Well, then on my turn, I get to roll 1 dice for each of those workers. So I get to roll 3 dice. You take the total of those dice, and then you divide it. In the case of wood, you'll divide it by 3. But depending on the resource, you'll divide it by a different number. So with wood, it's 3. With clay, it's 4. Stone is 5. And gold is 6, if I'm remembering correctly. Right? Then you'll just round down, and then that's how much of that resource you get. And then you can also acquire like tools and things, so you can do a +1 and increase your total roll to try to get you over the edge there to get that extra resource. And so there's just that added little bit of push your luck where it's like, oh, I need 3 wood. How many people do I need to send there to make sure I get that? It's very simple, but it's also, I don't know, it's very satisfying. And those dice rolls, maybe some people, wouldn't like the game because that part feels a little lucky. But I think the more you play it, the more you realize that it's just that added little bit of push your luck. And even a bad roll isn't going to torpedo your chances. Yeah, just a really great game, Stone Age. We also tend to play a ton of like lighter card games like Six Nymphed, Ink and Gold, Sushi Go, For Sale, No Thanks. These are absolute classics. So there you go. That's a little bit of a wrap up of the month of May. A pretty busy month of gaming. I'm hoping over the summer to have some more in-person gaming. We're going to try to ramp that up a little bit. So we'll have a different variety of games here for these little monthly wrap-ups. But anyway, thank you so much for watching, and goodbye.